Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and good Shabbos. It is I want to say it's a beautiful day here in Huntington, but it's cloudy but it's warm. It's unseasonably warm, but it's beautiful nonetheless because it is Shabbat, and that's what we're here for. So a beautiful day nonetheless, and it seems like it's going to be a pleasant day today as well. All right, we are going to begin our morning service with, of course, Shabbat Shacharit, the morning blessings. All right, these were traditionally said at home when one got out of bed or on the way to synagogue for services. And they are just a series of relatively short brachot, relatively short blessings and readings, warming us up, making us ready for the longer brachot, the longer blessings of Pesukei de Zimra, which then warm us up for Shacharit proper. So we're going to begin on page 68. 1 second, the doorbell just rang. So I'll be right back, and then we'll start with Modeh Ani. All righty, let some people in, but we are on page 68. Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam. Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam. Shehechezarta bi nishmati b'chemla. Rabba emunatecha, modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam. Going to continue on page 74. Ma tohu, ma tohu, ma tohu, ma tohu alecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. Mishkanotecha Yisrael, va'ani berov chastecha, ahavo veitecha, ehesh tachaveh, el heichal kodshecha, b'yiratecha, el heichal kodshecha, b'yiratecha. Adonai haftimon beitecha, umakom mishkon kivodecha, va'ani eshtachaveh v'yekra, evrecha lifnei Adonai osi, va'ani tafilati, lecha Adonai, eit ratzon, Elohim, berov chastecha, aneni b'emet yishecha. We're on page 76. Asher Yatzar, one of the most beautiful prayers penned by the rabbis, thanking God for the wonder that is the human body, the body that houses our soul. Page 76. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher yatzar et ha'adam b'chokhmah, ubaravo nekavim nekavim, chalulim chalulim, galui v'yadu lifnei chisei kvodecha, she'im yipatech echad mehem, o yisatem echad mehem, אי אפשר להתקיים ולעמוד לפניך. ברוך אתה אדוני Rofei chol basar mafli la'asot. Page 82 and following. Birkot HaShachar proper, the morning blessings. Actually, it's page 80. Sorry, page 80. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher natan l'sechel v'bina l'habchin ben yom u'ben layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam pokeach ivreim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam roka haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam hamechin mitzadei gaber. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam hanoten la'et koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam Hama'avir sheina me'inai, Numa me'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, Shasani b'tzelem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, Shasani ben choreim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, Shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, Ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, Oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Near the bottom of page 86. Page 86, let's read together in English. O Adonai, our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, hamalamed Torah li'amo Yisrael. We turn the page to page 88, piece from the Mishnah, Elu Devarim. These are the things that we can do, and we can never do too many or too much of them. And just about all of them, actually, I'm going to say all of them, are how we interact with other people, from honoring our parents through studying Torah. Top of page 88. Elu Devarim she'ein lehem shiur, she'adam ochel perutehem ba'olam hazeh, והקרן קיימת לו לעולם הבא. ואלו הם כיבוד אב ואם וגמילות חסדים והשכמת בית המדרש שחרית וערבית והכנסת אורחים וביקור חולים והכנסת כלה ולוויית המת ועיון תפילה והבאת שלום בין אדם לחברו ותלמוד תורה כנגד כולם. And we'll close out this particular section of the morning service with Kaddish the Rabbanan, pages 90 and 92. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'alma divrach hiruteh, v'yamlik malchuteh, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayeh d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach l'olam olamei almaya, Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitaleh, v'yithalal, shmei, d'kudusha, brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, v'amiran v'alma v'yimru, Amen. All Yisrael, v'yal Rabbanan, v'yal Talmidehon, v'yal kol Talmidehon, v'yal kol man daskin v'oraita, Di v'yatra hadain v'di v'chol atar v'atar. Yehei lahon l'chon shlama rabba. China v'chista v'rachamim. V'chayin arichin v'mezuneh v'vichei v'fakonam mikodom avahon v'dishmaya v'ara v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya. L'chaim tovim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu brachamav ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. Going to leave Birkot HaShachar and move into Pesukei de Zimra, longer pieces of prayer that now focus less on the individual and more on the people, Israel. Top of page 94, Baruch She'amar. Baruch She'amar v'haya olam, Baruch hu, Baruch oseh v'reshit, Baruch omer v'yoseh, Baruch gozer makayim, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch mishalem sachar tov v'reyahav, Baruch haylad v'kayam v'netzach, Baruch podeh u'matzil, Baruch shemo. With songs of praise, we extol you and proclaim your sovereignty, for you are the source of life in the universe. One God, life of the universe, praised and glorious ruler, your name is eternal. Blessed are you, Adonai, sovereign, who is glorified through praise. Baruch atah Adonai, melech muhulal b'tishbachot. Page 96, verses from Psalm 92. Labrit. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. The first part we'll chant, and then we'll go silent, and then we'll come back and chant Sadiq Katamar. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat Tov Lehodol Ladonai Uzamer L'Shimcha Elyon Lehagid Baboker Chastecha Ve'emunatecha Baleilot Alei Asur Valei Navel Alei Higayon Bechinor Alei Asur Valei Navel Alei Higayon Bechinor. Sadiq Tamar Yifrach Keres Balvanon Yihiske Shetulim Beveit Adonai Bechatzrot Eloheinu Yahafrichu O Jenuhu B'Seva D'Shenim B'Ra'ananim Yihiyu Lehagi Ki Ashar Adonai Tzuri V'lo Avlatabo. The bell went. I will be right back. There it is. Multiple hats today.
Something wrong with the feed. I think I'm going to suggest to him that possibly we should leave the door open at 10 o'clock. It's a tricky thing. See, what we used to do was we left it open until 10:15. We left it open till 10:15. Yeah, but he was going to close the door. Well, human beings would do it.
All right, friends. We're going to be on page 97. 97, Psalm 140, Psalm 145 with a little help from its friends. And Psalm 145 becomes Ashrei. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha, oji hallelujah selha. Ashrei ha'am shekacha lo, ashrei ha'am shadonai Elohav. Tehillah leDavid, aromimcha Elohai hamelech, va'avracha shimcha le'olam va'ed. B'chol yom avarchecha, v'halala shimcha le'olam va'ed. Gadol Adonai humla me'od, v'ligdaleto ein cheker. Dor l'dor yishabach ma'asecha, u'poratecha yagidu. Vadar kivod hodecha, v'divrei niflotecha asicha. Ve'ezuz nortecha yomehu, u'daletecha asaprena. Zecher avtucha yabihu, v'tzitkatecha yehanehu. Chanun baruchu Adonai, erech apayim u'gdol chesed. Tov Adonai lakol, v'rachamav al kol ma'asav. Yoducha Adonai kol ma'asecha, v'chasidecha yevarkucha. Kivod malchutecha yomeru, u'gvoratecha yedaberu. Lahodia livnei ha'adam gvorotav, v'kavod ha'adam malchutaho. Malchutecha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. So mechanai l'chol hanoflim, v'zokef l'chol hakfufim. Einei chol elecha yisabehu, v'yata noten lahem et ochlam be'ito. Poteach et yadecha, u'maspil l'chol chai ratzon. Tzadik Adonai b'chol drachaha, v'chasid b'chol ma'asaha. Karov Adonai l'chol koraha, l'chol asher yikruhu v'emet. Ritzon Yirayav Yaseh, v'et Shabbatam Yishma v'yoshien. Shomer Adonai kol ohavav, v'et kol harasheim yashmid. Tehillat Adonai daber pihi, v'varech kol basar shem kodsho li'olam va'ed. V'anachnu nevarech yaha, me'ata v'ad olam. Hallelujah. Continuing with the theme of Hallelujah. Page 100, Psalm 150. Hallelujah, hallelujah bekodsho, hallelujah birkia uzo, hallelujah bivorotav, hallelujah kerov gudlo, hallelujah beteka shofar, hallelujah benevel v'chinor, hallelujah betofu machol, hallelujah b'minim v'ugav. Hallelujah b'tziltzalei shama, hallelujah b'tziltzalei trua, kol haneshama tehalelia, hallelujah, kol haneshama tehalelia, hallelujah. Page 101 at the top. Nishmat kol chai, tivarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. And let's read together in English near the bottom of 101. Let the soul of everything alive bless your name, Adonai our God, and the spirit of all flesh glorify and exalt your name forever, O sovereign. Transcending time, space, and time, you alone are God. We have no sovereign besides you, God of the first and the last, God of all creatures. May all generations, who is praised, Master of all generations, who is praised in multitude of praises, who guides the world with abundant loving kindness, and all creatures with mercy. Adonai neither slumbers nor sleeps. God awakens the sleeping, arouses those who slumber, gives speech to the mute, and God loosens the bonds of captives. God supports the fallen and strengthens those who are bent over. You alone do we acknowledge. We'll continue silently for the next few pages. Okay, יקראו את שמך אלוקינו, כי חוטא לך יהודה בכל לשון לך ותשלם, ובלת לך תכרע, וכל קודמה לפניך תשתחווה, וכל יראוך, וכל קרן. אמר לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני, וכל קרובי את שם קודשו. האל ותעצמות עוזך, הגדול בכבוד שמך, הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורותיך, המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא, שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו. וכתוב רננו צדיקים באדוני, לישרים נאווה תהילה, בפי ישרים תתהלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ובמקלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל. ורינה יתפאר שמך מלכנו בכל דור ודור. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ, כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, שיר ושבחה, הלל וזמרה, עוז וממשלה, נצח גדולה וגבורה, תהילה ותפארת, קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודאות, אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אלוהי העולמים. Page 106, חצי קדיש. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עולם מעלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה גם מהירה בעלמא ויאמרו amen. Page 108, the beginning of Shacharit proper, Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mitzvat kriyat shema lahamlicho belevav shalem ulyachdo belev tov ulavdo benefesh chafetza ulavdo benefesh chafetza. And together, praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us how to recite the Shema, to declare wholeheartedly God's rule, and to declare earnestly God is one, and to enthusiastically worship God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer ur uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uborei et hakol. Near the bottom of page 110, let's read together. Praised are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai. In wisdom you form them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created. May they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMe'orot. Top of page 112. Ahava Rabav Tanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chemla Gedola V'Tera, Chamalta Aleinu. And let's read the paragraph together in English. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai, our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears, whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. V'ha'ereinu b'toratecha, v'dahabek lebeinu b'mitzvotecha, v'yachel levaveinu li'ahava u'yira et shmecha. V'lo nevosh, v'lo nikaleh, v'lo nikashel, le'olam va'ed, ki b'shem kodshecha, hagadol v'hanora v'hatachnu, nagila, 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 v'nismecha b'shuatecha. V'havienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot ha'aretz, v'tolichenu kamamiut li'artzenu, ki el poel yeshuot ata, ubanu b'charta b'kerotanu l'shimcha hagadol, sela b'yemeh, lehodot l'chal yahedcha b'yahavaha, baruch atah Adonai, abocher ba'amo Yisrael, b'yahavaha. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levacha, u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol me'odecha, v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher nochi mitzavecha, hayom al levavecha, v'shinatam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, b'shivtecha b'beitecha, u'vlektecha b'derech, u'b'shokbecha u'vkumecha, u'kshartam li'ot al yadecha, v'hayu l'totafot b'neinecha, u'ktaftam al mezuzot beitecha, u'visharecha. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael, v'amarta aleihem, v'asu lehem tzitzit, al kanfei bigdeihem, l'dorotam, v'natenu, al tzitzit hakenah, v'til techelet, v'haya lechem, l'tzitzit, Uvitem oto, ushartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, v'asitem otam, v'lo tatuhu, acharei lavachem, ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם emet. Page 120 and the following will go silent. ולדבריו חיים וקיימים ונאמנים ונחמדים ועד עולמי עולמים. מצרים גאלתה אדוני אלוהינו מבית עבדים והביאתנו על זאת שילחו אהובים ונאמרו אל ונתנו ידידים וזמרות שירות ותשבחות ברכות והודאות למלך אל חי וקיים. עם ונישא גדול ונורא משפיע גאים ומגביה שפלים מוציא אסירים ופודה ענבים ועוזר דלים ועונה לעמו בית השם. תהילות לאל עליון ברוך ומבורך, משה בני ישראל חנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נהורה תהילות ועושה פלא. שיר חדשה שיפו גאולי לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופתחנו מך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני God Yisrael. We are at the Amidah, the center prayer for Shacharit, pages 124, 126, 128, and yes, even 130 we'll be chanting together. And then we're going to go silently 132 until the end on 142. And during that time, you can follow along in the Hebrew, you can read the English, or you could offer up your own prayer, your own personal meditation. But we're going to begin together on 124, the Amidah. Adonai sifatai tiftach uvi yadi tehilatecha. Adonai sifatai tiftach uvi yadi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor, V'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot Ve'imahot, U'mevii Goel Livnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magin, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Abraham, V'Ezrat Sarah. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ, כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו, מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, בשבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. If you are still completing your Amidah, please continue at your own pace. We're on the top of page 132, reading in English. Those who keep Shabbat by calling it a delight will rejoice in your realm. The people that hallow Shabbat will delight in your goodness. For being pleased with the seventh day, you hallowed it as the most precious of days, drawing our attention to the work of creation. And on page 134, let's read together that paragraph. Our God and God of our ancestors, be pleased with our rest. Sanctify us with your mitzvot, and grant us a share in your Torah. Satisfy us with your goodness, and gladness with your salvation. Purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, Adonai, our God, grant us your holy Shabbat as a heritage. May Israel, who sanctifies your name, rest on Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai, mikadesh haShabbat. All right, we're going to turn to page 139, a little bit of hoda'ah, a little bit of thanksgiving, right? But thanksgiving only comes out of gratitude, which is hakarat hatov, which is recognizing the good, right? And it doesn't have to be big items. Like today, I looked out the window and I thought it was going to be cold and ugly, and it's actually quite warm and pleasant. So, little things like that, right? We're at the beginning of winter and it feels like the middle of spring, right? And I know it's not going to last. But, I'm grateful for that today, that it's a beautiful day out there. And I have friends here today that are observing and celebrating Shabbat with us. And all of you online. So lots to be grateful for, lots for Thanksgiving. And so on 139, we're going to read responsibly, and I'll start, and then Joan, and then Maxine, and then way back in the back, Miranda. For the expanding grandeur of creation, for worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations.
For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons.
Modim anachnu lach. Maxine, for the joy.
For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements.
Modim anachnu lach.
For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression.
Modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared.
Modim anachnu lach.
Joan?
Oh.
We come back.
All who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others may live in dignity and freedom.
Modim anachnu lach.
For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose.
Modim anachnu lach. And together, we pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Blessed are you, Adonai. Your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha u'lecha na'eh lehodot. And we're going to close out the Amidah, as we always do in the mornings, with Sim Shalom. Page 140. Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha, Chaim v'chesed v'rachamim, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael Amecha, Bareinu Yotzreinu Kulanu Kiechad Bior Panecha, Ki Bior Panecha Nahatata Lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Torat Chaim v'ahavat chesed, utzedakah uvracha v'rachamim, v'rachamim v'chaim v'shalom, v'rachamim v'chaim v'shalom, v'tov be'einecha l'vaharech et amecha, Amecha Yisrael, B'chol eit u'b'chol shah, B'shlomecha. Baruch atah Adonai, Hamevarech et amo Yisrael, B'shalom. All right, we're going to jump ahead to page 253 for the Mishaberach, the prayer for healing. Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu Abraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarka Rachel v'Leah Hu Yivarech et HaCholim. Kadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleihem L'ach Limam L'Rapotam L'Achzikam V'Yishlach Lehem Mehebra Refuah Shlema Min HaShamayim Refuah Tanefesh Refuah Taguf Hashta Bagala Vizman Kariv V'Nomar Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, and Rachel, bless and heal those who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us all say, Amen. I'm going to jump ahead to 258 and 259, the prayers for our community. And I'll ask Joan if she'll start with the prayer for our congregation.
Source of all being, may the children of this community learn these passions from us: love of Torah, devotion and prayer, support of the needy. May we guide with integrity, and may our leadership be in your service. May those who teach and nourish us be blessed with satisfaction. May we appreciate their time and their devotion. Bless us with the fruits of wisdom and understanding, and may our efforts bring fulfillment and joy.
Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levacha b'yirah na'avod. Miranda, how about the top two paragraphs for our country?
Thus says Adonai, this is what I desire, to unlock the fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of lawlessness, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. Share your bread with the hungry and take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, give clothing, and do not ignore your own kin. If you banish the yoke from your midst, the menacing hand, the evil speech, if you offer compassion to the hungry and satisfy the famished creature, then your light shall shine in the darkness.
Thank you both. Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim, Yishlayu Ohavayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you prosper. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim, Sur Yisrael V'Go'alo, Varech et Medinat Yisrael, Reishit Smichat Geulatenu, Hagen Aleha B'Yevrat Chasdecha, Ufros Aleha Sukat Shlomecha, Ushlach Orcha V'Amitecha L'Rosheha Sareha V'Yoetzeha, V'Taknein V'Eitzah Tova Milfanecha, V'Natata Shalom Ba'aretz, V'Simchat Olam Liyoshveha V'Nomar Amen. Maxine, how about the English in the bottom of 259, please?
Okay. O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread it over the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fulfillment of joy for all who dwell there. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all. Thank you. All right, friends. Shabbat Shalom and good Shabbos this week. Thank you. That's right. You're filling in for the macadamias today. Well, the macadamias are out doing a mitzvah. They are covering shifts at the hospitals, so their Christian colleagues can have the day off.
The
So,
Ronald McDonald House.
well, there are other people at the Ronald McDonald House as well, but Scott and Tam are at the hospital,
Oh, okay.
giving other doctors the day off. So
Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos.
that's right. That's right. An honorary macadamia in the back. I can make you a macadamia now. But we're going to start our trip through Sefer Shemot, also known as the Book of Exodus. And unlike Genesis, which was really concerned with our patriarchs and their often dysfunctional families, Shemot moves away from individual families. With this parsha begins the story of Bnei Yisrael, the descendants of the patriarchs, and the ones who will make the journey from slavery to freedom. However, this journey from Mitzrayim This Mitzrayim comes from the word Meitzar, which means a narrow place, right? So they were constricted. They weren't able to be who they were when they needed to be in Mitzrayim. From the narrow place to the promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey, this journey will be anything but a walk through the park. Now that everyone from the Yosef story is dead, things begin to change. Because a new Pharaoh arises, Bnei Yisrael no longer enjoys their favored people status. A new Pharaoh means new decrees, new laws, and they mean trouble for our ancestors. Because they become so numerous, Pharaoh fears that our ancestors will join with an enemy and war against him. In order to avoid this, he enslaves them. Now, much commentary has been written about this. How exactly did he do it, and how did Bnei Yisrael not recognize it while it was happening? Nevertheless, while Bnei Yisrael might not have noticed becoming slaves, there came a point when they saw their predicament. And once this happened, they began a pattern that will continue throughout the rest of the Torah. They cry out to God. Vayeh anchu v'nei Yisrael min ha'avodah v'yizaku lata'al shavatam el ha'elohim min ha'avodah vayishma Elohim et na'akatam vayishkor Elohim et brito et Avraham et Yitzchak v'et Yaakov Vayar Elohim et bnei Yisrael, Vayeda Elohim. Bnei Yisrael were groaning from the bondage, and they cried out. And their cry from bondage rose up to God. God heard their moaning, and God remembered the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And God looked upon Bnei Yisrael, and God took notice of them. Until recently, I never really paid much attention to these verses. They come at the end of chapter 2, and they're kind of flyover material. But there is something beautiful about the way Bnei Yisrael gets God's attention. And these verses also give a hint at how we can make our own interpersonal relationships better. Bnei Yisrael gets God's attention because they cry out. There's a problem, and they are powerless to solve it. Things have gotten way out of hand, and they feel there is nothing they can do. So they cry out. What happens next is what is so wonderful and so helpful. Actually, there are 4 things that happen. God hears, God remembers, God looks, and finally, God sees. These 4 verbs are critical to the rest of the story and to our lives. God could have simply ignored the cries. But if that happened, there's no story. Or God could have become angry with Bnei Yisrael. After all, they seem to have forgotten their covenant with God while they were growing fat and contented in Egypt. Now, only after things have gotten bad do they cry out. And in its own sneaky way, the Torah suggests that they don't cry out to God directly. Rather, they make a sort of generic, albeit loud, complaint. But God doesn't get angry at this. Instead, God listens. God hears their cries. And then God remembers that there's a relationship between God and Bnei Yisrael. And as a result of that, God looks at them, really looks at what's happening, and sees the cause of their groaning. And then God feels a sense of intimacy, a sense of love for Bnei Yisrael. And that's the importance of the last verb that is used, vayeda, which denotes intimacy. Right? When we joke, we say, somebody knows somebody in the biblical sense. That's the word, yeda. When we say, no, God could have simply The Torah could have used the simple word makir, to recognize. Yeah, God saw them. God recognized them. Yeah, there's some sort of relationship going on here, but they've been out of touch for so long. They don't write, they don't call, they don't text, right? But it's not that. The Torah uses the word yedah, that there's an intimacy that God feels for this people. The Kedushat Levi, one of the first Hasidic masters, wonders, as I did, why God doesn't get angry. After all, God has taken care of their ancestors. God has made these promises, and Bnei Yisrael has yet to fulfill their end of the bargain. Instead, Kedushat Levi teaches that God chose to perceive Bnei Yisrael's cries not as cries of complaint, but instead as their way of saying they want to return to God. They want to get closer. Because they missed their connection to God, they did the only thing they knew how. They cried out. And it's God's reaction that is so astounding. Instead of being angry, God reacts out of love. God hears their cry, and God remembers that there's a relationship. God looks at them, really sees what's going on, and then God feels for them. The Kedushat Levi suggests that God's feeling involves an intimate connection with Bnei Yisrael that leads to a sense of compassion. This connection, he says, turns God's potential anger into love. But God's not alone in this connection. We, Bnei Yisrael, also play a role. We seek to connect with God through prayer and meaningful intention, which evokes God's connection to us and compassion for us. For me, God's reaction to the people's complaining is a lesson for us all. Sometimes when we complain, we cause the very people from whom we want and need connection and compassion to turn away from us. The Kedushat Levi points out that Bnei Yisrael cried out from their own pain. When God hears this cry, God does two things. One, God delivers them from Mitzrayim, and moreover, in hearing their cries, God heard their cry as a desire to be close. At this moment in time, God listens carefully and looks beyond the surface complaint. God heard something special beneath the cries of unhappiness. God heard a cry for connection. In our relationships with others, we often cry out in pain and rage. When we find ourselves in our own personal Mitzrayim, our own narrow and constricting places, we sometimes find it difficult to express our yearning for connection and closeness. We want to know that we matter, that others care for us. But when we cry out, sometimes the very people we want to hear us turn away. And even sadder is how many times are we the people who turn away? And here again, God's reaction teaches us a deep lesson. How often do we really hear and understand other people's groans, cries, and complaints? Do we take the time to listen and recognize that their cry is about needing to connect with us? How often do we have the presence and the patience to do this? Too often, I'm afraid, we simply ignore them, thinking to ourselves, it's just more of the same. I've heard this before. Or we pretend to listen, but we are distracted by our phones, our tablets, and our computers. We convince ourselves that there's nothing new. We've heard this song before, and nothing is going to change. This morning, God suggests something different for us. God shows us a path to connection. However, this path requires us to be attentive. It requires us to hear and see and remember the relationship, and to also notice the people around us. We need to be willing to hear their complaints for what they are, not what we think they are. This won't always be easy. but when we are aware of the need for us to listen, the need to listen to, and really to see the person before us, we have the possibility to transform our relationships. When we are mindful of this, when we take the time to emulate God's behavior towards Bnei Yisrael, the results for all of us can be truly liberating. Shabbat Shalom and good Shabbos.
Shalom, Shabbos.
The new macadamia. All right, we are going to be,
Rabbi,
yes, ma'am.
would you think that it's a possibility that a person might think, why did God let them be slaves? Why did God put that bad thing on them, which is the same subject as why did God allow the Holocaust to happen?
Well, first of all, I don't think God allowed the Holocaust to happen. We allowed it to happen
How is that?
by not paying attention.
Not paying attention to what?
What was going on in the world at the time?
Aiming in Germany.
In Europe, yeah. I mean, what happened in Germany was the culmination of things that had been happening in Europe for centuries,
Centuries.
right? But but after at the end of World War I, we put things into place that crushed Germany, and somebody rose up. And I mean, what happened in Germany didn't happen overnight, right? He started in the 30s, early 30s, 32. Actually, he started in the 20s, but he didn't gain ground. So lots of people could have done lots of things in the meantime.
And what are some of those things that those people could have done?
Not voted for him.
Not voted for Hitler?
Yeah.
Oh,
That would have been, I mean, he got power by being elected, right? He was a slick talker. He gave the people what they wanted to hear. He made promises to make their lives better, and yet he didn't. And so, any number of things could have happened. Once the war started, the United States could have gotten involved a lot sooner, but we waited until after Pearl Harbor, right? Even though the Jewish press in Europe was talking about camps and railroads and all of that,
yes.
Roosevelt decided to do nothing. And, so, I mean, what could we have done? We could have done a lot. With the thing in Israel, in Egypt, I'm not 100% sure. The commentators wonder about that as well. And they seem to think that too many of the people grew assimilated and they started to be Egyptian. But as we learn, I mean, another talk about this could have been, as we learn, no matter how assimilated we feel in a country, they're always going to see us first as Jews.
Oh, yes, of course.
It's happened time and time again. It's
First-
happening in this country.
First time it happens is in this morning's Torah portion, right? When we're talking,
We forget we're Jews.
we forget it happened. We forget because countries open up. I mean, after the Enlightenment in Europe, and France and Germany started to accept Jews as citizens, we forgot. But the French and the Germans didn't forget. We were the outsiders. But yeah, okay. I mean, we looked like them. I mean, when you look at the Shoah and the last places to really where the Germans tried to make the Judenrein, right, to make them Jew free, were places like Berlin and the cities in Germany, because the Jews looked like the Germans. And the intermarriage rate in the 1800s in Germany for Jews was 75%. So you had people who were Jews because they had Jewish grandparents, but they themselves were no more Jewish than the Lutheran guy down the street in Berlin, because they had been raised as non-Jews, right? But because the Jews looked, I mean, when the Nazis went into places like Poland and into the Ukraine and into what now becomes Western Russia, Jews looked like the Hasidim that we thought they did. They looked like Tevye. They looked like what's his wife's name? I can't remember Tevye's wife's name.
From Fiddler on the Roof?
Yeah,
Oh, gosh, what was her name?
exactly.
I just saw it the other day.
Right, but that they look like Sarah or whomever, right? But in Germany, they look like Germans, and they were Germans. But so that's why it made Germany so difficult to get all the Jews, because they looked like Germans. They didn't look like Tevye. So we could have done a lot in terms of Mitzrayim. Did God let it happen? I think sometimes, our behaviors let things happen rather than God allowing it to happen. Goldie, thank you, Golda.
I was thinking of Golda Meir, Goldie.
Close enough. Golda Meir could have been married to Tevye.
Yes, it was.
Well, that's about it.
The same thing like the assault on the Capitol. We let it happen.
Mm.
And then we're surprised, oh.
I mean, it's we let things happen, then we're surprised, and once things happen, they click things into action or into motion that we find hard to stop. Right? So it's but this morning's Torah portion shows that no matter where we are, if it's not ours, if it's not Israel, we're always going to be seen as the outsider.
The Jews first, even if you don't like them. No.
Yeah. So, but in a person,
Sometimes I think that the people in Huntington, people in our synagogue who are converts, they don't understand this history, but they don't understand what?
Nothing.
They don't understand what? Maxine says I'm going to say something. I'm political.
well, first of all, I know where you're going, Joan.
Where?
But I'm going to tell you why. You're going to say that when people join us and they come in and they choose to be Jewish, that they don't understand necessarily the history the way we understand it.
That's what I think. Yes.
Okay, you and the rabbis of 2,000 years ago are on the same page. In the Talmud, the rabbis say when somebody comes to you, the first question you ask them is why. Why do you want to join us? We are the most persecuted people around. Why do you want to throw your lot with us? And they have to have an answer, right? They can't say, I like the food. I like
The music.
I like the music. I just love what you do with matzah.
I think that they are saying that I think that these converts, I think they feel, how do I know? I think that they feel that they are accepting our religious point of view, that we do not believe in Jesus, and they accept the religious part. They just don't understand the historical part, I think.
Well,
They study and do a lot of research.
Yeah.
Now with the internet, the study and the research helps so much.
well, I agree. I agree, but here's the thing. When I work with people who want to join, my question is slightly different, and I usually end the session with this question because I don't want them to answer it very quickly. I will say to them, look, I understand you want to join. Why? They'll give me a little bit of whatever. Okay, one person said because I want to get married in 3 weeks. I'm like, we're done here. After we talk about their reason, I say, okay, God willing, you won't ever taste anti-Semitism. God willing, you won't ever face what happened in Germany. But the decision you're making now, maybe your children or your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren, who through no fault of their own or no desire of their own, you are putting them on a path that could be very, very dangerous. Go home and think about that. Right? That is you need to think about.
You say that to them?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a valid remark.
I think so too, or else I wouldn't say it.
We're supposed to say that.
Right. I mean, it's not, becoming Jewish isn't like becoming a member of any other religion. You are buying into a history that is filled with horrible, horrible, horrible things.
But I think, in addition to not being fully aware of the danger, I think that sometimes they are not fully aware of the joys. And that is what the joy of Shabbat dinner and the joys of the various joys that we have as Jews, they're not fully aware of those things, I am afraid.
I'm going to raise your ante. I think a lot of Jews aren't aware of that as well.
That's true.
I think a lot of Jews are not aware of that as well. And that's our job. That's our job.
That is our job.
That is, right? That is our job. Because,
To welcome people wholeheartedly who've gone through
yeah,
everything
but
into
to welcome
the
Jews
community.
wholeheartedly as well, and to hopefully, inflame their pintele yid, inflame their Jewish soul, so that they want to do more, so that they want to be more. Right? I mean, if I had $1 for every time I heard somebody complaining about Yom Kippur and the fast and this, I could buy an NFL football team.
If you don't like it, don't fast.
Right? But the idea is that that's not the whole point of Yom Kippur. The point of Yom Kippur is very beautiful.
I love
But we miss that because we're fasting. We're in shul all day.
I love the book Gates of Repentance. Well, we don't read that one, but I love that.
Yeah, or I mean, how many? One of my big complaints in American Judaism is, at least in liberal Judaism, which is not necessarily liberal politically, but liberal in terms of the tradition, as opposed to Orthodox, is that if I had $1 for every time I heard a parent say to their child, after your bar mitzvah, after your bat mitzvah, you don't have to go back. You don't have to go back to shul, right? If I had $1 for every time I heard that, I could buy 2 football teams, right? I could buy 2 football teams.
Baseball teams.
And well, football teams are more expensive. But the idea is that, and then these kids never come back. And so I wind up, when they do come back, they're adults, and they have a 13-year-old understanding of Judaism. They have someone who is 13, they have, even though they're 30, they have that teenager's understanding of God, understanding of the tradition. And that's not right. You need to, as become an adult, you need to see more about the beauty of the tradition, the pains of the tradition, but the beauty that comes because we refuse to be despair. We refuse to throw our hands up in the air and say, that's it.
And that is our role here in Huntington.
It's our role in the world, Joan.
Well, but we can only
do Huntington right now, yes.
If we could do Huntington, that would be a big achievement.
I'm telling you, we got people online all over the place.
And if we could do one person, it would be better than today.
That's
2 persons better than today. Because my goal is that they would see the joy in Judaism.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly.
Because I think they've already accepted certain theological situations, but I want them to feel the happiness of Judaism. And my son Seth, as you know, was here.
Yes.
And he said, well, we have to invite people over for Shabbat dinner. I said, oh, no, we're not going to do that. That is too much work. Well, he said, of course, he'll help. And so we did something, and it was a lot of work, but I could see that it was a very, very worthwhile thing to do.
I agree. And if it weren't for COVID, we could be having dinners here.
Yeah.
And bringing people in.
Right.
And giving them a taste of Shabbat.
That's it. Well, we've got to do something to keep them loving Judaism.
Yeah, we have to keep everybody loving Judaism. Even the non-Jews, we need to have them love Judaism, or it makes our lives very difficult.
Yeah.
No, it's a lot of food for thought out of a parsha that a lot of people say is not that interesting because there's not a lot of action, but a lot of food for thought. A lot of food for thought. All right, friends, page 282. We'll start closing out with Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, lateit gedula liyotzeh breshit, shelo asanu kagoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishpachot hadama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gohor aleinu kecho hamonam, va'anachnu korim, umishkachavim umodim, Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, akadosh baruch hu. Shehu noten shamayim v'yoser haaretz, u'moshev yikaro b'shamayim imav, u'shchinatu zo, b'gobhei meroni. U'Eloheinu einot, emet malkeinu efesu lato, Hakatu v'torato, yadav hayom v'hashemota, elevavecha, hi Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim imo, v'al haaretz, mitachat eino. Hakatu b'toratecha, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai, l'melech al kol ha'aretz, v'yom hahu, yihyeh Adonai echad, u'shemo, Ushemo echad.
Everybody's losing her.
I'm losing my talus.
That thing doesn't stay on you.
Oh, it's I keep it that way because it gives my hands something to do. We continue observing Shloshim for Eric Pyburn, Bob Levy.
Who's Eric? Who's that? Who is Eric?
Eric Pyburn was a boy from my Tampa congregation who died at age 15. He was born with a serious cardiac defect, and by time he was 2 or 3, had 4 cardiac surgeries, and he finally he had this insatiable will for life. He would come into synagogue, and he had to carry oxygen with him all the time, and he was often in a wheelchair so that he wouldn't stress. But he would get out of his wheelchair, and he was only about that tall at age 14. But he had this zest for life, and he would come, when he would see me, he would literally vibrate. He was so happy. And one day, I had said to him, if mom and dad say it's okay, and you can get out of your chair, I'll give you a tour of the synagogue when you come on a Friday night. And he could not his parents said he couldn't stop talking about that for the week. So they get him, he gets there, he gets out of his chair, he comes over, he takes my hand, and he proceeds to give me a tour of the synagogue, telling me, well, this is where you stand, and this is where the cantor stands, and this is where you go when you need to do something secret. And he was talking about the cloakroom behind where I sat, and he took me all around, and at the very end, he gave me a hug, and he said, thank you for the tour. I didn't give him a tour, he gave me a tour. But that was Eric. No matter who you were, if you met him and you didn't walk away smiling, you have no soul. I mean, he is the one person that I have met in this world who just radiated pure love.
How sad.
So good.
How wonderful and
about
sad.
It was wonderful. His parents, I guess it's 3 weeks ago, requested that I write a eulogy as well that they could deliver at the funeral. And so I did. And, it was one of the hardest that I had to write, because I always hoped that Eric would be able to have a normal life, that science would catch up and fix him.
Did
fix his heart, fix his physical heart. I mean, his spiritual heart, his spirit was more than intact.
Beautiful,
He was a great guy, great kid,
beautiful.
great kid. I got Eric's stories, but I'll share more. But that's, and I wanted his name on there so we don't forget him, so that I don't forget him.
When she asked the question who he was, that was a beautiful story.
Yeah, thank you. He's a good guy. He was a good guy. All right. This week we observed the following yard sites: Max Schoenfeld, brother-in-law of Walter Lewis Sr., Mary Cantor, Jerome's wife, Rena Stern's mother, Joanne Glick Levy, David's sister and Billy's cousin, Shirley Bro Davis, mother of Charles, Tony, and Sarah Lynn, Jack Gottlieb, Gail's husband, father of Linda, Jody, and Laurie, Ira Herman, Claire's husband and father of 4, Sylvia Wagner Jupiter, mother of Ellen Hernandez, Arlene Sidney Murphy, relative of Jack Hyman, Mortimer Frolau, Susan Miller's father, Saul Keene, Leonard Keene's father, David Schreiber, father of Barbara Gross. May their souls be bound in the bond of life eternal. May their memories be a blessing to us always. May they all rest in peace. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 294. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabba, V'alma, Divrach, Hirute, V'amlik, Malchute, V'chayechon, U'vyomechon, U'chayei, V'chol Beit Yisrael, V'adallah, V'zman Kari, V'imru, Amen. Yehi, Shmei, Rabba, M'vorach, V'olam, V'omei Maya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitar, V'yitramam, V'yitnaseh. Yitkadar, V'yitzaleh, V'yitzhalom, Shmei, T'prisha, Brichu. Le'elav, Min Kol, Birchata, B'shirata, Tushbachata, B'nechamata, V'amiram, V'alma, V'imru, Amen. Yehi, Shlama, Rabba, Min Shemaya. V'chayim aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom v'yomav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. All right, friends, Shabbat Shalom and good Shabbos.
Shalom and
Rabbi.
Shabbos,
Yes, ma'am.
Are we gonna talk about the door? Could we talk about the door? It's the fact that you had to leave the pulpit.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
let me finish, and then we'll talk. All right. But it's a good point. It really is. I just want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. We had Joan, and we had Maxine, and we had the newest of the macadamias. We have Miranda in the back. And we had a really nice discussion. Those of you who tuned in and
enthusiastically worship God.
That's right.
Sorry, they enthusiastically worship God.
So this is what happens when we have people in the building. We have great discussions. We have lots of ruach, and so please come. We're socially distant. You can wear your mask, and if you're vaccinated, please come and join us. I love it when people are here and we have interaction.
Exactly.
I want to wish happy birthday to James War Smith. Yesterday was James's birthday, so a happy birthday.
He's feeling better.
And David Glick's birthday is today's the 25th, on Monday, the 27th. So happy birthday to David in advance and to James a day after. But we wish James a happy birthday last night as well. Let's see, services tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and no study session this week. We're taking a little bit of time off, but in January we will be back with our Sunday afternoon adult ed courses. No meetings this week. Monday night is our deep dive into Genesis. We are at the Cain and Abel story. Cain has just killed Abel, and we're trying to figure out why, because the Torah doesn't really tell us. So we're going to look at some commentary on Monday about how the rabbis envision this happening. Wednesday night is the best little Yiddish choir anywhere, so log on and get your Yiddish and your song on. And then next Friday night we'll be back. Next Shabbat morning we'll be back, and then next Sunday morning as well. And next week it's the end of the secular year. So 2021 is gone, and hopefully not 2021 is gone. Hopefully 2022 will bring us blessings and good things. Way they. All right, we'll close out with Ein Keloheinu and then have a quick Kiddush, and we'll wish you all Shabbat Shalom and a good Shabbos. Ein Keloheinu is on page 322. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadoneinu, Ein Kimalkeinu, Ein Kamoshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Chadoneinu, Mi Chimalkeinu, Mi Chmoshienu. Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adoneinu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adoneinu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adoneinu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Atahu Shektiru Avotenu, Lefanecha Ketoret Asamim. Vishamru Bnei Yisrael et HaShabbat La'asot et HaShabbat Ledorotam Berit Olam. Vishamru Bnei Yisrael et HaShabbat La'asot et HaShabbat Ledorotam Berit Olam. Beini uvein Bnei Yisrael, Oti Liolam. Vishamru Bnei Yisrael et HaShabbat La'asot et HaShabbat Ledorotam Berit Olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz vishamru b'nei Yisrael et hashabbat la'asot et hashabbat ledorotam berit olam. Ubayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinachash, Shabbat vayinachash, Shabbat vayinachash. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et hashabbat la'asot et hashabbat ledorotam berit olam. Zachor Yom HaShabbat L'Kadsho, Shesh Yamim Tavod Vatzita Kol Malatecha. V'Yom HaShvi Shabbat L'Adonai Elohecha, Lo Ta'aseh Chol Malacha, Ata Ubincha, Ubitecha Abdecha, V'Matecha, V'Hemtecha, V'Gercha Asher V'Shurecha, Ki Shesh Yamim Asa Adonai Et HaShamayim V'Ha'aretz, Et Hayam V'Kol Asher Bam, V'Yinach V'Yom HaShvi, Al Kain V'Rach Adonai Et Yom HaShabbat V'Yikadshehu, Savri. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, borei peri hagafen. Indeed. All right, let's see who says Shabbat Shalom via the interwebs this morning. We have Jedediah Jackson, Chag Molad Sameach, and Happy Shabbat. Yeah, it's not Chag Molad Sameach. No, thank you though, but we don't celebrate that. Mom, Shabbat Shalom from the two of us. Of course, that's Mom and Cliff. And LG, Good Shannon. Oh no, Good Shabbos. Okay. Well, that autocorrect is horrible sometimes. All right, everyone. Everyone have a great Shabbat. Go out and enjoy the weather if it's not raining. Be careful out there, and we'll see you soon.
Very nice.